Hello, and welcome to French Life and Times. Is there more to them than just pastries? I'm your host, Shai, and today I'm going to be interviewing 4 French mothers from distinct social classes in an attempt to gain a more complex understanding of 17th through 19th century French education, child care, literature, and nursing. What was the motivation behind choosing the career to be a wet nurse?
As a poor woman, I didn't have many options, and being uneducated, this is really one of the few career paths that I could choose.
Did you tend to your own children while also tending to the families that were assigned to you?
Unfortunately, I had to neglect my own children for those of higher class families. In some instances, the government assigned these children to me, and other times the parents themselves sought me out and gave their infants to me. Regardless, I have sent some of my children to perish because of my neglect towards them.
How did you handle the death of these children?
Well, I had so many new children coming in that the death of one of my many foundlings was insignificant.
I think I can speak on behalf of all women when I say that I kept emotionally distant from my children. I'm a working woman, and I found that if one of my children died, I was not terribly upset by it. With such a high mortality rate, I feel as though it is best to self-preserve and not get too attached to beings that will probably die before they reach the age of 10.
Even though I knew that there was a good chance my children would die young, I couldn't help but form a connection to them anyway. My children are one of the few things that bring me joy in this cruel, awful world. You gotta understand, I live on a farm, it's cold, it's dark, I don't have enough to eat. I don't like my husband, I don't have any neighbors. My kids are they're only people that are nice to me. And they help around the farm. Without them, I couldn't farm, I couldn't grow my crops, my husband wouldn't have enough work. I couldn't do anything without my kids, so I couldn't help but hope they would live. Sadly, I lost 2 children, very young. Pierre and Jean.
Could you elaborate upon some of your contributions to society during this time period?
Well, I was very charitable during this time, and I established foundling homes for abandoned children, and I really harnessed my inner Christian spirit and showed my concern for those in poverty by establishing these homes.
Bonjour. Oh, merci.
Yeah.
Au revoir.
As a poor young woman, what options were actually available to you in regards to the raising of your children?
Well, abortions were illegal and few even pursue that option. I did hear of one lady a few miles over, but it didn't work out well for her. In addition, that abortion and all others were terribly dangerous. There was a second option. I think it's completely barbaric, but many women took it. That's infanticide. So the woman would deliver their babies in secret, and then since they couldn't afford to raise them, they would smother the baby.
Mommy.
This is illegal and terrible and punishable by death. I think it's completely barbaric. I would never have killed Pierre or Jean.
And what about the women from more populated cities? Did they have more opportunities, less?
Yes, women in cities had more options when it came to getting rid of their children. Foundling homes first appeared in Italy, Spain, and France, where I live. Only after 1700 did they spread to Northern and Central Europe. But eventually European foundling hospitals admitted 100,000 abandoned babies annually. Unfortunately, demand always exceeded supply, and the government had to intervene.
Why did you give up the opportunity to fully care for your children and just hand them off to a wet nurse?
As a working woman, I did not have the money or time to raise my own children because I had to work my own job. Specifically during this period, women like myself were pushed into the workforce due to a great influx of migrants and stagnant wages. In addition, if I wanted to have a child and still work, I did not have any other option but to give up my child to a wet nurse because there were simply no other alternatives to breastfeeding.
I do not need to nurse my children. It is crude, which is why I hired a wet nurse to take care of my children. She can do that.
How did you discipline your children?
At first, I really disciplined my children to bring them to obedience because that was what I really valued, and so did the other mothers. However, with the start of the Enlightenment, I taught my kids with much more tenderness. There was really a push towards using imaginative teaching methods to teach my children, instead of the severe discipline that we used before. Now I had to dress my children in free-moving clothes instead of the whaleboned corset that I previously had bought for them, so that they would have a straighter shape.
I beat my children when they misbehave to ensure that they know who is the boss and to prevent them from being spoiled. After all, spare the rod and spoil the child. Everyone knows that good Christian children need to fear their parents, and that's exactly why I beat them.
What educational opportunities were available to your children while they were growing up?
My children have been able to attend nice elementary Jesuit schools for years now. My kids were taught basic literacy and religion, and my boys were taught arithmetic, and my girls were taught needlework.
So the literacy rate is very high. They also had great elementary schools for their children. Of course, I don't live in Prussia, so my children aren't getting these opportunities.
As a French woman, I'm exposed to so much Catholic and Protestant reading material. Since there's so much competition in France over which religion will dominate, and there are so many pamphlets circulating, our literacy rate has increased tremendously. The surge of religious materials has really propelled education here in France.
What types of reading material did you have available?
There's so much reading material available at this time. I really read mostly fantasy books, but there's so many fairy tales and medieval romances, and my favorite are the crime stories. The danger and magic makes me so excited, and it's really an escape from reality. It also reminds me of past wisdom tales. There's a lot of practical reading available as well. So we have books on rural crafts and household repairs and even plants.
Yeah. I read a lot of chapter books. I'm very interested in the religious messages that are spread around to my village. They told me, the people who write these books tell me about the promise of happiness after death. This gives me much hope in my hard life. These books have very moral teachings, and they really increase my confidence in God. Everything they say makes sense, and I understand why he would say these things.
I read all sorts of material, but I also read much in the almanac. The calendar of secular, religious, and astrological events were really helpful in my everyday life. The information was so beneficial for everyone of all classes. I also read my husband's science books and the books of the Enlightenment, just in case I ever get invited to a salon.
Do you feel that the Enlightenment had a direct effect on your or your children's lives?
I was able to hear many of the Enlightenment ideals through rumor and gossip. Whenever I was in taverns or cafes or even going for a walk in the gardens, I heard of these ideas. Also, my neighbor, who's a servant, came back and taught us about the many ideals she heard from her masters.
The Enlightenment transformed my life. I learned many new ideas from the books and donated lots of monies to foundling homes. A little less, my dear. And the Enlightenment has truly been revolutionary.